The unexpected collision. The Chicago skyline glittered like a constellation brought to Earth, its towering buildings piercing the October night sky. Emma Martinez stood at the edge of Navy Pier, her camera pressed against her eye as she captured the city's reflection dancing on Lake Michigan's dark waters. The wind whipped her long black hair across her face, carrying with it the scent of approaching rain and the distant sound of jazz from a nearby restaurant. At 27, Emma had spent the last 5 years building her photography business from nothing. Tonight should have been her breakthrough, a chance to photograph the prestigious Hartley Foundation's annual charity gala at the Art Institute. But like so many opportunities before, it had slipped through her fingers at the last moment. The event coordinator had called just hours ago, explaining that they'd decided to go with a more established photographer instead. Emma lowered her camera, feeling the familiar weight of disappointment settling in her chest. Her rent was due in 3 days, her credit cards were maxed out from purchasing new equipment, and her refrigerator contained nothing but leftover takeout and a bottle of wine she was saving for either a celebration or a complete breakdown, whichever came first. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A text from her sister, Maria. "How did the gala go? Please tell me you got it." Emma couldn't bring herself to reply. Not yet. She needed a moment to compose herself, to find the right words to explain another failure without worrying her family. They'd already sacrificed so much to help her chase this dream. Her parents had taken out a second mortgage to help her through art school, and Maria had loaned her money countless times when clients didn't pay on time. Thunder rumbled overhead, and the first fat drops of rain began to fall. Emma quickly tucked her camera into her bag, protecting it from the weather. She should head home to her studio apartment in Wicker Park, but the thought of those 4 walls closing in on her failures was unbearable. Instead, she found herself walking toward the Art Institute, drawn like a moth to flame. Maybe she could catch a glimpse of the gala from outside, see what she was missing. It was masochistic, perhaps, but Emma had always been one to face her disappointments head-on. "See you." Rain intensified as she approached the museum's modern wing, where floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the glittering party inside. Women in designer gowns and men in custom tuxedos mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, champagne flutes in hand, examining priceless artwork as if it were casual entertainment. Emma pressed closer to the window, her breath fogging the glass as she watched a world she'd never be part of. "Excuse me, miss, but you can't loiter here." Emma turned to find a security guard eyeing her suspiciously. Her rain-soaked appearance and worn jeans clearly marked her as someone who didn't belong. "I'm sorry, You need to move along." Humiliated, Emma backed away from the window. She turned to leave, her vision blurred by rain and unshed tears, and collided hard with someone rounding the corner. The impact sent her stumbling backward, her bag flying from her shoulder. She felt herself falling, the wet pavement rushing up to meet her, when strong hands caught her arms, pulling her upright and against a solid chest. "Whoa there," a deep voice said, warm with concern. "Are you all right?" Emma found herself looking up into the darkest blue eyes she'd ever seen. The man holding her was tall, maybe 6'2", with thick brown hair that the rain had tousled into attractive disarray. He wore a perfectly fitted charcoal suit that screamed expensive, but his expression was kind, almost worried. "I'm fine," Emma managed, suddenly aware that his hands were still on her arms, that she was still pressed against him. She could feel the heat of his body through his rain-dampened shirt, could smell his cologne, something subtle and undoubtedly costly. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't watching where I was going." "Neither was I," he admitted with a slight smile that transformed his serious face. "I was trying to escape from..." He glanced back toward the museum entrance. "Well, from in there." "The gala?" Emma couldn't hide her surprise. "You're leaving the Hartley Foundation gala?" "Desperately," he said, then seemed to realize he was still holding her. He released her arms but bent to retrieve her fallen bag. "These things are insufferable. Same people, same conversations, same..." He paused, lifting her camera bag. "You're a photographer." Emma nodded, taking the bag from him. Trying to be anyway. What do you mean trying? Either you are or you aren't. It's not that simple when you can't pay rent with artistic integrity, Emma said, then immediately regretted her bitter tone. Sorry, I'm having a rough night. The man studied her for a moment, his blue eyes thoughtful. Behind him, Emma noticed a black town car idling at the curb, a driver waiting patiently despite the rain. You know what? So am I, he said suddenly. I'm Alexander, by the way. Alexander Cross. Emma's heart stopped. Alexander Cross. The Alexander Cross. Founder and CEO of Cross Technologies, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. The man who'd revolutionized digital security systems and was worth, according to Forbes' latest estimate, approximately $3 billion. She stammered. Tired of that party, he finished for her. And thoroughly soaked. There's a little cafe around the corner that makes the best hot chocolate in Chicago. Would you join me? You look like you could use something warm, and I could use some company that doesn't want to talk about stock portfolios or yacht clubs. Emma knew she should politely decline. This was Alexander Cross. He existed in a different universe than her. But something in his eyes, a loneliness that matched her own, made her nod. I'm Emma, she said. Emma Martinez. Well, Emma Martinez, Alexander said, offering her his arm in an oddly old-fashioned gesture. Let's get out of this rain. The cafe was tiny and perfect, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. It was the kind of place Emma loved but could rarely afford. Alexander held the door for her, and they were greeted by the warm aroma of coffee and freshly baked pastries. The interior was all exposed brick and mismatched furniture with local artwork covering the walls. Mr. Cross, the elderly owner, Mrs. Chen, beamed at them. Your usual table? Thank you, Mrs. Chen. And 2 of your special hot chocolates, please. They settled into a corner booth and Emma became acutely aware of her appearance. Her dark hair was plastered to her head, her mascara was probably running, and her thrift store jacket looked even shabbier next to Alexander's designer suit. You come here often? She asked, trying to distract herself from her self-consciousness. Whenever I need to remember why I started my company in the first place, Alexander said, shrugging off his suit jacket. Underneath, his white dress shirt clung to his body in a way that made Emma's pulse quicken. This used to be my office, actually. I'd sit right here with my laptop coding for hours, living on coffee and Mrs. Chen's kindness. She let me pay my tab whenever I could afford it. Emma looked at him with new interest. That must have been before the money, the galas, the expectations, he finished. Sometimes I miss those days. Everything was simpler when I was just trying to solve problems, not manage an empire. Mrs. Chen arrived with their hot chocolates, topped with mountains of whipped cream and chocolate shavings. Alexander thanked her warmly, and Emma noticed how his entire demeanor changed when he talked to the older woman, the corporate mask slipping to reveal someone more genuine underneath. So, Emma Martinez, photographer, he said, turning his attention back to her. Tell me about your work. There's not much to tell. I take pictures, try to sell them, mostly fail. I doubt that. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. You love to photograph? The question caught her off guard. Most people asked about her clients or her rates, not her passion. Moments, she said after a pause. The in-between moments that people usually miss. A mother fixing her daughter's hair before a recital. An elderly couple sharing a laugh on a park bench. The way light hits the city just before a storm. I like capturing the poetry in ordinary life. Alexander was quiet for a moment, stirring his hot chocolate thoughtfully. That's beautiful. And exactly the opposite of what those society photographers do at galas. They capture poses, not truth. Is that why you left early? He laughed, a rich sound that made something flutter in Emma's stomach. Partly. Mostly I left because Vivian Hartley was trying to set me up with her niece again. The woman is relentless. Poor billionaire fighting off potential wives. Emma teased, surprising herself with her boldness. You'd be amazed how exhausting it is being seen as a bank account with legs. Alexander said, but he was smiling. No one at those parties sees me. They see my net worth, my connections, my potential usefulness. It's refreshing to talk to someone who didn't even recognize me at first. Oh, I recognized you, Emma admitted. I just couldn't believe Alexander Cross was helping me up off the pavement. Why not? I'm human, despite what the business journals suggest. They talked for hours as the rain drummed against the windows. Alexander asked about her photography, her family, her dreams. He listened with genuine interest as she told him about growing up in Pilsen, about her parents who'd immigrated from Mexico, about her struggle to make it as an artist in a city that seemed designed to crush dreams. In return, he shared his own story, growing up in foster care, teaching himself to code on library computers, the driving need to build something from nothing. He talked about the loneliness of success, how every relationship felt transactional, now how he sometimes felt like he was drowning in other people's expectations. I haven't talked to anyone like this in years, he admitted as Mrs. Chen gently informed them she was closing for the night. Really talked, I mean. Emma glanced at her phone and gasped. It was nearly midnight. I should go. I have a shift at the coffee shop tomorrow morning. You work at a coffee shop? Photography doesn't exactly pay the bills yet, she said, gathering her things. Thank you for the hot chocolate and the conversation. This was unexpected. Alexander stood when she did, pulling out his wallet. But instead of money, he extracted a business card. I have a proposition for you. Emma's guard immediately went up. She'd heard about wealthy men and their propositions. Seeing her expression, Alexander quickly added, a professional proposition. My company is launching a new community initiative, bringing technology education to underserved neighborhoods. We need someone to document the program, show the human side of what we're doing, not corporate photography, but real moments. The kind you described. Emma stared at the card. Are you offering me a job because you feel sorry for me? I'm offering you a job because you're talented and passionate, and because I think you could capture something my usual photographers would miss, he said. Also selfishly because I'd like to see you again, and I suspect you're too proud to. Let me take you to dinner without a professional reason. Heat flooded Emma's cheeks. You want to take me to dinner? Very much, he said simply. But first, come to my office tomorrow. Let me show you the project. If you're not interested, no hard feelings. But I think you will be. Emma took the card, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent electricity through her entire body. This is crazy, you don't even know me. I know enough, Alexander said. I know you're passionate about your art. I know you see beauty where others might miss it. I know you didn't treat me differently when you found out who I was. And I know I haven't felt this comfortable with anyone in a very long time. A horn honked outside, Alexander's driver growing impatient. I should go, he said reluctantly. But think about my offer. Both of them. Both? The job and dinner, he clarified with a smile that made her knees weak. Though I'm hoping you'll say yes to both. He paid the bill, leaving what Emma suspected was an enormous tip for Mrs. Chen, then walked her to the door. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets gleaming under the streetlights. Can my driver give you a ride home? He offered. Emma shook her head. I'll take the L. I need time to think. Fair enough. He hesitated, then leaned down and kissed her cheek, his lips warm against her rain-cooled skin. Until tomorrow, Emma. Martinez. Emma watched the town car disappear into the night, her hand pressed to her cheek where he'd kissed her. Her phone buzzed with messages from Maria, but she ignored them. How could she possibly explain that she'd just had hot chocolate with one of the richest men in America, that he'd offered her a job, that he wanted to take her to dinner, that she was already half in love with him? The thought terrified her. She'd known Alexander Cross for exactly 3 hours, and already he'd turned her world upside down. Men like him didn't fall for women like her, not in real life. This was probably some elaborate game to him, a distraction from his privileged life. But as Emma walked to the L station, she couldn't forget the loneliness in his eyes, the way he'd listened to her dreams without judgment, the gentle way he'd helped her collect her things in the rain. Maybe, just maybe, this was the opportunity she'd been waiting for, not just professionally but personally. She pulled out his business card, running her finger over the embossed lettering. Tomorrow she would walk into Cross Technologies and see what Alexander was really offering. Tomorrow, she would decide if she was brave enough to take a chance on something that seemed too good to be true. But tonight, for the first time in months, Emma Martinez went to bed with hope blooming in her chest like a flower reaching toward the sun. The next morning came too quickly. Emma stood outside the Cross Technologies building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the cloudy Chicago sky. She'd changed outfits 3 times before settling on her best black slacks and a burgundy blouse her sister had given her for Christmas. Her portfolio case felt heavy in her hand, weighted with her best work and her hopes. The lobby was all marble and modern art, with a security desk that looked more like a spacecraft command center. Emma approached nervously, clutching Alexander's business card. "I have an appointment with Mr. Cross," she said to the security guard, fully expecting to be turned away. The guard checked his computer, then smiled. "Ms. Martinez, Mr. Cross is expecting you. Take the executive elevator to the top floor. His assistant, James, will meet you." The elevator ride seemed endless. Emma watched the floor numbers climb, each one increasing her anxiety. What was she doing here? She was a nobody from Pilsen, with a camera and unrealistic dreams. Alexander Cross had probably forgotten all about their conversation, or worse, regretted it in the harsh light of sobriety and daylight. The elevator opened into a stunning reception area, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Chicago. A young man in an impeccable suit approached her immediately. "Ms. Martinez, I'm James, Mr. Cross's executive assistant. He's finishing a call but asked me to bring you right in." Alexander's office was exactly what she'd expected. Massive, modern, and intimidating, and nothing like what she'd expected. Yes, there was the enormous desk and the impressive view, but the walls were covered with photographs. Not corporate headshots or pictures of Alexander with celebrities, but street photography, portraits of everyday people, the kind of art that captured life rather than status. "My secret addiction," Alexander's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, looking devastatingly handsome in a navy suit. "I collect work from unknown photographers, people who see the world differently." "These are incredible," Emma said, moving closer to examine a photograph of an elderly man feeding pigeons. "Who took this one?" "A teenager from the South Side. I found him selling prints at a street fair. He's in art school now." Alexander moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne again. "I meant what I said last night, Emma. I have an eye for talent, and you have something special." He gestured for her to sit on the leather sofa rather than the formal chairs by his desk. Emma appreciated the less corporate setting, though being this close to him on a couch did nothing for her concentration. "Tell me about the community initiative," she said, trying to maintain some semblance of professionalism. Alexander's eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "We're creating tech centers in underserved neighborhoods, starting with Pilsen, actually. Not just computer labs, but maker spaces where kids can learn coding, robotics, 3D printing, real skills that can change their futures. But I don't want sterile promotional photos. I want someone who can capture the joy on a kid's face when they write their first code, the pride of a grandmother learning to video chat with family overseas, the community coming together around technology." He pulled out a tablet and showed her architectural renderings, curriculum plans, testimonials from community leaders. This wasn't some tax write-off vanity project. Alexander had clearly put thought, time, and significant resources into this. "The pay is $50,000 for 6 months of work," he continued, "with the possibility of extending if the project expands to other cities. You'd have creative control and all rights to your work after we use them for the initiative." Emma nearly choked. $50,000 was more than she'd made in the last 2 years combined. "That's very generous," she managed. "It's fair." Alexander corrected. Good work deserves good pay. So, are you interested? Yes, Emma said without hesitation. Absolutely yes, Alexander smiled, and her heart did that fluttering thing again. Excellent. James will have the contracts ready this afternoon. But now, about that dinner. Mr. Cross, James's voice came through the intercom. Miss Hartley is here. She says, it's urgent. Alexander's expression darkened. Of course she is. I'm sorry, Emma, can you give me just a moment? The door burst open before he could stand, and a stunning blonde woman strode in like she owned the place. She was everything Emma wasn't. Tall, elegant, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Emma's annual rent. Her perfect face twisted in disgust when she saw Emma. Alex, darling, who's this? She asked, her voice dripping with disdain. Vivian, this is Emma Martinez, our new photographer for the community initiative. Emma, this is Vivian Hartley. Photographer? Vivian laughed, a cold, tinkling sound. Is that what we're calling them now? Really, Alex, even for you, this is a bit obvious. Emma felt her face burn with humiliation. She stood, gathering her portfolio. I should go. No, Alexander said firmly, catching her arm. You should stay. Vivian was just leaving. I most certainly was not, Vivian said. We need to discuss the merger. Daddy won't wait forever for your answer. There is no merger, Alexander said coldly. I've told you and your father repeatedly I'm not interested in combining our companies or anything else. Vivian's perfect composure cracked. You can't be serious. Do you know what you're throwing away? For what, some nobody with a camera? That's enough. Alexander's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Security will escort you out. Don't come here again without an appointment. Vivian looked between them, her beautiful face ugly with rage. You'll regret this, Alex. When she shows her true colors, when she bleeds you dry like they all try to do, remember that you could have had someone who actually belongs in your world. She stormed out, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume and tension in her wake. I'm sorry about that, Alexander said, running a hand through his hair. Vivian has expectations that I've never encouraged. She's right, though, Emma said, quietly. I don't belong in your world. Alexander moved closer, his hands gently gripping her shoulders. Maybe not, but maybe I don't belong in that world either. Maybe I've been looking for an excuse to escape it. The intensity in his eyes made Emma's breath catch. You don't know me. Then let me, he said simply. Have dinner with me tonight, and tomorrow night, and the night after that. Let me know, you, Emma Martinez. Let me show you that not all of this has to be complicated. Against every logical thought in her head, Emma found herself nodding. Okay. Alexander's smile was radiant. Okay? Dinner. Tonight. But somewhere normal, not some five-star restaurant where I'll use the wrong fork. I know just the place, he said. Mrs. Chen does private dinners on Tuesday nights. Emma laughed, feeling the tension dissipate. Perfect. As she left his office, contracts in hand and a dinner date planned, Emma felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. She could play it safe, treat this as just a job, protect her heart from the inevitable disappointment, or she could jump, trust that maybe, just maybe, Alexander Cross would catch her. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop by the 4th floor before you leave. Curious, Emma took the elevator down to the 4th floor, where she found Alexander waiting for her in what appeared to be a fully equipped photography studio. This is for the project, he explained, but you can use it whenever you need to. Consider it part of your compensation package. Emma walked through the space in awe. Professional lighting, backdrops, editing stations with the latest software, equipment she'd only dreamed of using. This is too much, she breathed. This is just the beginning, Alexander said, and something in his voice made her think he wasn't just talking about photography equipment. As Emma left the building, her head spinning with possibilities, she made a decision. She was going to jump off that cliff. She was going to trust this impossible, improbable connection with a man who should have been completely out of reach. Because sometimes, Emma realized, the best things in life came from the most unexpected collisions. The walls we build 3 weeks had passed since Emma's collision with Alexander Cross, and her life had transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. The community center project was everything Alexander had promised. Challenging, meaningful, and creatively fulfilling, she spent her days in Pilsen, capturing moments of discovery as children learned to code, teenagers built robots, and grandparents conquered their fear of computers. But it was her evenings with Alexander that had truly changed her world. They'd had dinner every night for the first week, starting with Mrs. Chen's cozy cafe and gradually expanding their horizons. Alexander showed her hidden gems throughout Chicago: a jazz club in an abandoned warehouse, a rooftop garden known only to locals, a 24-hour diner where he'd written his first business plan on napkins. In return, Emma introduced him to her Chicago, the Mexican bakery where her mother had worked, the community center where she'd learned photography, the bridge where she'd taken her first award-winning photograph. "You're different with me," she told him one night as they walked along Lake Michigan, the city lights reflecting off the water. "More relaxed. More you." "That's because you see me," he'd replied, taking her hand. "Not my bank account, not my company, just me." But now, standing in her cramped apartment at 2 a.m., developing photos in her makeshift darkroom, she still preferred film for personal projects. Emma felt the weight of their differences pressing down on her. Tomorrow was the Cross Technologies annual gala, the same type of event where they'd met, and Alexander had asked her to attend as his date, publicly, where everyone would see them together. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "Can't sleep either? I can see your light on from my window." Emma smiled despite her anxiety. Alexander's penthouse was miles away across the city. He couldn't possibly see her apartment. "Liar. You're not even home. You're still at the office," she texted back. Her phone rang immediately. "How did you know?" Alexander's warm voice filled her ear. "Because I know you," Emma said, cradling the phone between her shoulder and ear as she continued developing photos. "You always work late when you're stressed. And you always develop film when you're anxious. I can hear the chemicals in the background." They'd learned each other's habits quickly, almost unconsciously. Emma knew Alexander took his coffee black, but added sugar when he was worried. Alexander knew Emma hummed Selena songs when she was happy, and switched to Chavela Vargas when she was contemplative. "Are you reconsidering the gala?" Alexander asked, his voice carefully neutral. "No," Emma said quickly, then paused. "Maybe. Alex? I don't belong there. You belong wherever you want to be. That's easy for you to say. You've never been looked at like you're the help who's forgotten her place." There was a long pause. "Actually, I have. Before the money, I was just another foster kid with big dreams. I remember what it's like to be looked through instead of looked at." Emma felt a pang of guilt. Sometimes she forgot that Alexander hadn't always been wealthy, that he'd built his empire from nothing. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I know you understand. It's just, Vivian called me today." Alexander's voice turned sharp. "What? When? What did she say?" "She found me at the community center. She was actually fairly polite. She just wanted to warn me that you have a pattern, that you date women outside your social circle when you want to rebel, but you always come back to your own kind eventually." "Emma, that's not—" "She showed me photos, Alex. You with a waitress 2 years ago, a kindergarten teacher the year before that. All relationships that lasted a few months before you moved on." The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions and fears. "Those weren't the same," Alexander finally said. "I wasn't the same. Emma, what we have is 3 weeks old," Emma interrupted. "We've known each other for 3 weeks. And in those 3 weeks, I've been more myself than I have in years. Emma, please, just come to the gala. Let me show you that you belong in my life, regardless of what world we're supposedly from." Emma looked at the photos hanging in her darkroom, images she'd taken over the past 3 weeks. Alexander laughing with kids at the community center, his usual corporate armor completely absent. Alexander and Mrs. Chen playing chess in the cafe. Alexander helping her father fix his car when they'd had dinner with her parents. Oil staining. His expensive shirt as he refused to let her father struggle alone. "I don't have anything to wear," she said finally. A weak protest, but a protest nonetheless. "That's already taken care of. Before you get angry, I didn't buy you a dress. My sister Elena is a fashion designer. She's dying to meet you and has volunteered her services." "You have a sister?" Emma was surprised. Alexander had mentioned being in foster care but never mentioned siblings. "Foster sister, technically. We were in the same group home for 2 years. She's the closest thing to family I have. She'll be at the gala tomorrow. I want you to meet her." This changed things. Alexander wanting her to meet his family, chosen family but family nonetheless, felt significant. "Okay," Emma said. "I'll go." "Really? Really? But if anyone treats me like Pretty Woman, I'm leaving." Alexander laughed. "Deal?" "And Emma?" Vivian was wrong. "You're not a rebellion. You're a revelation." The next morning, Elena Cross burst into Emma's apartment like a hurricane of energy and designer clothing. She was petite, with vibrant purple hair and an infectious smile that immediately put Emma at ease. "You must be Emma. I've been dying to meet the woman who's turned my brother into an actual human being," Elena said, pulling Emma into a hug before she could protest. "He's been insufferable for years, and suddenly he's whistling." "Whistling? Do you know how disconcerting it is to hear Alexander Cross whistle?" Emma laughed, instantly charmed. "He mentioned you were in foster care together?" "The 7th Circle of Hell, more commonly known as St. Catherine's Group Home," Elena said, unpacking garment bags. "Alex protected me from the bigger kids and I made sure he occasionally ate something besides code and ambition. We looked out for each other. Still do." As Elena worked, she shared stories about young Alexander, the boy who'd taught himself to code on library computers, who'd sold his first app to buy Elena art supplies for her college portfolio, who'd given her the startup money for her fashion line with no strings attached. "He's never brought anyone to meet me before," Elena said, pinning the hem of a stunning midnight blue gown. "The others, they were distractions. You're different." "How can you tell?" "Because he's different with you. He's not playing the part of Alexander Cross, billionaire CEO. He's just Alex, the nerdy kid who still sleeps with his laptop and forgets to eat when he's excited about something." The dress Elena had chosen was perfect, elegant without being, ostentatious, sophisticated, but still Emma. It was a deep midnight blue that complemented her olive skin, with delicate beading that caught the light like stars. "You look stunning," Elena said, stepping back to admire her work. "My brother isn't going to know what hit him." A knock at the door interrupted them. Emma opened it to find a delivery man with an enormous bouquet of peonies, her favorite. Flowers, something she'd mentioned once in passing. The card read, "For courage, and because you deserve beautiful things. A smooth bastard," Elena said, reading over Emma's shoulder. "He's got it bad." That evening, Alexander arrived to pick her up, and the look on his face when she opened the door made all her anxiety worth it. "You're breathtaking," he said, his voice rough with emotion. He looked pretty breathtaking himself in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, but it was the vulnerability in his eyes that made Emma's heart race. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. "No," Emma admitted, "but let's go anyway." The gala was held at the Field Museum, transformed into a glittering wonderland for the evening. Ice sculptures, champagne fountains, and Chicago's elite mingling beneath the watchful gaze of Sue the T-Rex. Emma felt like she'd stepped into another world. "Breathe," Alexander murmured in her ear as they entered. "You've got this." The first hour wasn't as bad as Emma had feared. Alexander kept her close, introducing her to people as Emma Martinez, the brilliant photographer documenting our community initiative. Most were politely interested, some genuinely engaged with her work. Alexander's business partners seemed surprised but not hostile. Then Vivian arrived. She swept in wearing a dress that probably cost more than most people's cars, immediately drawing attention and admirers. Her eyes found Alexander and Emma across the room, and her smile was sharp as a blade. "Here we go," Alexander muttered. "Stay strong." Vivian approached with a small army of society women, all perfectly coiffed and dressed to kill. Alexander, "Darling," she purred, air-kissing his cheeks. And Emma, "How brave of you to come." "Vivian," Alexander said coldly, "I believe I made my feelings clear about your presence in my life." "Oh, Alex, don't be dramatic. We're all adults here." She turned to Emma with false sweetness. "That's a lovely dress, Elena's work, isn't it? She's so good at making things look more expensive than they are." Emma felt the sting but refused to react. "She's incredibly talented. Alexander's lucky to have her as family." "Family," Vivian laughed. "Is that what we're calling fellow foster kids now? How progressive." "That's enough," Alexander started, but Emma squeezed his hand. "Yes, family," Emma said firmly. "The kind you choose. The kind that stands by you regardless of bank accounts or bloodlines. But I wouldn't expect you to understand that, Vivian. From what I can see, your relationships are all transactional." Vivian's perfect face flushed. "You little ladies," a warm voice interrupted. "No bloodshed at the gala, please. It's so hard to get out of the marble." Elena appeared, linking her arm through Emma's. "Vivienne, you look adequate as always. Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to steal Emma. There's someone dying to meet her." She whisked Emma away, leaving Alexander to deal with a fuming Vivian. "You handled that perfectly," Elena said. "I've been wanting someone to put that witch in her place for years." She led Emma to a quiet corner where an elderly woman sat observing the party with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Mrs. Chen," Emma exclaimed, delighted. "My dear girl," Mrs. Chen said, patting the seat beside her. "Elena invited me. I haven't been to one of these things in 40 years, but I wanted to see Alexander with you." "What do you think?" Emma asked. "I think that boy has finally found his way home," Mrs. Chen said cryptically. "He used to sit in my cafe for hours, building his empire on my Wi-Fi, but always alone. Now when he comes in, he talks about you. Your work, your family, your dreams. He's building something new now, something more important than any company." "We've only known each other 3 weeks," Emma said, the doubt creeping back in. "I knew my husband for 3 days before I knew he was the one," Mrs. Chen said. "Time is just time. Connection is what matters." Before Emma could respond, a commotion erupted across the room. Raised voices, the crash of breaking glass. She turned to see Alexander standing toe-to-toe with a man she recognized from the business news. Richard Hartley, Vivian's father. "You think you can humiliate my daughter publicly?" Hartley was saying, his face red with anger. "Your daughter humiliated herself," Alexander replied coolly. "I've been clear about my lack of interest in her or your proposed merger. You need this merger, Cross. Your little community pet project is bleeding money. The board is asking questions. You align with us or I'll make sure you lose everything." "I'd rather lose everything than sell my soul to you," Alexander said. Emma started toward them, but Elena caught her arm. "Don't. Alex needs to handle this himself." "He's right about one thing," Hartley continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're hemorrhaging money on this ridiculous community center project, throwing away millions on a demographic that will never give you a return on investment. All for what? To impress some nobody photographer?" Emma felt every eye in the room turn to her. The humiliation was overwhelming, but then she saw Alexander's face, not embarrassed or angry, but proud. "That nobody photographer has done more for this city in 3 weeks than you've done in your entire privileged life," Alexander said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "And those kids in Pilsen, the ones you think aren't worth investing in, they're the future. They're hungry and brilliant and creative in ways you'll never understand from your ivory tower." He walked away from Hartley, crossing the room to Emma. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "You shouldn't have to deal with this." "Neither should you," Emma replied. "Want to get out of here?" God, yes. They left together, walking out of the gala without a backward glance. Alexander loosened his bow tie as they stood on the museum steps, the cool night air a relief after the stifling atmosphere inside. Your board really is upset about the community center funding? Emma asked. Some of them, Alexander admitted. It's a significant investment with no traditional return, but it's the right thing to do. You could lose your company? No, I have controlling interest, but I could lose some major partnerships, see my stock value drop. He turned to face her. I don't care. Emma, building this company was about proving about never being powerless again. But somewhere along the way it became a prison. These past 3 weeks with you, working on something that matters, being with someone who sees me, this is what I want. Alex, I'm falling in love with you, he said suddenly. I know it's too fast, too soon, too everything. But I am. You make me want to be better, to do better. You make me remember why I started all this in the first place. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. I'm falling for you too, she admitted, but I'm terrified. We're from such different worlds. No, Alexander said, cupping her face in his hands. We're from the same world, the one where you fight for everything you have, where you know what it's like to be hungry for more than food, where you build your own family because the one you were born into couldn't or wouldn't keep you. The money, the galas, the Vivian Hartleys of the world, that's not my world. That's just where I ended up. You're my world, Emma. You're my home. He kissed her then, there on the museum steps with the city lights sparkling around them, and Emma felt all her walls crumble. This was crazy, impossible, too fast, and absolutely right. When they broke apart, both breathless, Emma noticed a flash from the bushes. Paparazzi. That'll be in the society pages tomorrow, she said. Good, Alexander replied. I want everyone to know you're with me, that I'm with you. They went back to his penthouse, the first time Emma had been there. She expected something cold and modern, but it was surprisingly warm, filled with books and photography, including several prints she recognized from the community center. You bought my work? She asked, surprised. I bought everything you've ever sold online, he admitted, slightly embarrassed. I might have been a little obsessed before we officially met. That's either romantic or creepy. I'm hoping for romantic. Emma walked through his space, seeing more of the real Alexander in the details. A foster care awareness poster, a coding manual worn from use, a photo of him and Elena at her fashion show. Stay, he said softly. Not for... I just don't want you to go. We can watch movies, talk, I can cook. Actually, I can't cook, but I can order excellent takeout. Emma laughed. I'll stay, but I'm cooking. You have a kitchen that cost more than my parents' house. Someone should actually use it. She made them spaghetti aglio e olio, simple but perfect, while Alexander sat on the counter, watching her with such open adoration it made her blush. What? She asked. You're the first person who's ever cooked for me here, he said. The first person who's made this place feel like a home instead of just expensive real estate. After dinner, they curled up on his couch, Chicago spread out, below them like a carpet of lights. Emma felt safe in a way she hadn't in years, maybe ever. What happens now, she asked. Now we ignore the gossip, continue the community center project, and figure this out day by day, Alexander said, pressing a kiss to her hair. I meant what I said, Emma. You're my home. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Together, Emma agreed, the word feeling like a promise. Her phone buzzed with text from her family who'd apparently seen the gossip sites already. Her sister's message made her laugh. Holy hell, Em. When you decide to date, you don't mess around. P.S. He's hot. My sister approves, Emma told Alexander. Good. I'm meeting them officially on Sunday, right? You still want to come to family dinner? Emma was surprised. She'd mentioned it earlier in the week, but after tonight's drama, she assumed he'd want to lay low. Of course. Your mother promised to teach me how to make proper mole. Emma turned to look at him. You know that's a 6-hour process, right? I've got time, Alexander said simply. All the time in the world for you. As the night deepened around, Then Emma realized that sometimes love didn't follow a timeline or respect social boundaries. Sometimes it arrived like a collision in the rain, unexpected and life-changing. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to trust it, it could bridge any gap between worlds. But even as she drifted off to sleep in Alexander's arms, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that their challenges were just beginning. Vivian and her father wouldn't give up easily. The board would continue to pressure Alexander about the community center, and the media would have a field day with their relationship. Tomorrow they'd have to face it all. But tonight, in this moment, they had each other. And maybe, Emma thought as Alexander pulled her closer, that was enough. The next morning arrived, with a vengeance. Emma woke to her phone exploding with notifications. The photos were everywhere. Billionaire's new nobody. One headline screamed. Crosses lines with help, read another. Don't read them, Alexander said, taking her phone. They don't matter. They do, though, Emma said. This is your reputation. My reputation has survived worse. But if you want to leave, to walk, away from this circus, I'll understand. Emma looked at him, hair mussed from sleep, eyes vulnerable in the morning light, and made her choice. I'm not going anywhere, she said. But we're doing this my way. No hiding, no shame, and no letting them win. Alexander smiled, pulling her back into his arms. I love your way. As the sun rose over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Emma Martinez and Alexander Cross prepared to face their first scandal together. It wouldn't be their last, but with each challenge, their bond would grow stronger. Because sometimes the best love stories weren't the easy ones. Sometimes they were the ones that required courage, trust, and the willingness to jump into someone's arms, not knowing if they'd catch you but believing they would try. And Alexander Cross, Emma was learning, would always catch her. When the storm break 6 weeks had passed since the gala disaster, and Emma had learned what it meant to be in the public eye. The paparazzi had become her constant shadows, following her to the community center, camping outside her apartment, turning her simple life into a spectacle. But it was Sunday dinner at her parents' house that had become her sanctuary, the one place where the chaos couldn't reach them. More rice, mijo? Emma's mother Isabel asked Alexander, who sat at their modest dining table looking more at home than he ever did at fancy restaurants. Sí, por favor, señora Martinez, Alexander replied in carefully practiced Spanish, earning him a beaming smile from Isabel and an eye roll from Emma. Show off, Emma muttered, but she was smiling. Over the past weeks, Alexander had thrown himself into learning about her culture, with the same intensity he applied to coding. He'd been taking Spanish lessons, learned to dance salsa from her father, and could now make better tamales than Emma, a fact her mother never let her forget. Your pronunciation is getting better, Emma's father, Carlos, said approvingly. Soon you'll be ready for the real test, ordering at the taqueria down the street without pointing at the menu. Carlos, leave the poor boy alone, Isabel chided, but she was laughing. He's trying. He's doing more than trying, Emma's sister Maria interjected, scrolling through her phone. Did you all see the announcement about the scholarship program? Emma looked at Alexander in surprise. What scholarship program? Alexander shifted uncomfortably. It's nothing big, just something Elena and I have been working on. Full rides to college for kids from the community center program who show promise. In tech or arts. Nothing big? Maria showed them her phone. 50 full scholarships, including living expenses and mentorship programs. That's $5 million a year, Alex. It's important, Alexander said simply. These kids deserve the same chances I had. Carlos reached across the table and clasped Alexander's shoulder. You're a good man, mijo. Even if you did steal my daughter's heart before I could properly threaten you. Papa, Emma protested. What? It's tradition. A father should get to threaten his daughter's boyfriend at least once. Carlos winked at Alexander. But I think the universe already tested you enough. That woman at the gala sounded like a real piece of work. The mention of Vivian cast a momentary shadow. She'd been suspiciously quiet since the gala, which worried Emma more than any direct attack would have. "She's been handled," Alexander said, but something in his tone made Emma look at him sharply. Before she could question him further, her phone rang. It was James, Alexander's assistant. "Emma, I'm sorry to interrupt Sunday dinner, but you and Mr. Cross need to see something. I'm sending you a link now." Emma's stomach dropped as she opened the link. It was a video on a gossip site, already with millions of views. The title read, "Gold Digger Exposed, The Truth About Emma Martinez." The video was a masterpiece of manipulation. It showed carefully edited clips of Emma at various events with Alexander, overlaid with commentary from anonymous sources claiming she'd targeted him, that she'd researched his routine before their accidental meeting, that she'd been overheard bragging about landing a billionaire. There were photos taken out of context, including one of her looking at luxury apartments online, actually for a photography shoot location, made to look like she was already spending his money. "This is lies," Isabel said, looking over Emma's shoulder. "All lies. But the damage was already being done." Emma's phone exploded with notifications. Her Instagram, which she used for her photography business, was being flooded with hateful comments. Her email was full of interview requests from tabloid journalists. Someone had even found her parents' address and posted it online. "I have to go," Emma said, standing abruptly. "They're going to come here. I can't let them harass you." "Sit down, mija," Carlos said firmly. "We're not afraid of some reporters. But Papa, no buts. This family doesn't run from bullies." Alexander was on his phone, his jaw tight with anger. "James, get security to the Martinez house immediately, and get our legal team on this. I want that video down within the hour." "Alex, you can't fight the entire internet," Emma said quietly. "Watch me," he replied, then his voice softened. "Emma, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. My world. My problems. Our problems," Emma corrected, but she could feel the weight of it, all crushing down on her. Maria was reading comments on the video, her face growing increasingly angry. Who would do this? Who has this kind of time and resources to create something so elaborate? "Vivienne?" Alexander said grimly. Or rather, her father's PR team. "This has Richard Hartley written all over it." Within an hour, their quiet family dinner had transformed into a war room. Alexander's legal team arrived, along with a PR specialist, named Dana, who looked like she could eat controversy for breakfast. Elena showed up with Mrs. Chen, who'd closed her cafe early when she heard the news. "We fight back," Elena declared, pacing the small living room. "We show them the real Emma." "No," Emma said, "I'm not playing their game. I'm not going to parade my life story to prove I'm worthy of love." "Then what do you suggest?" Dana asked, though not unkindly. Emma looked around the room at these people who'd become her extended family. Her parents, sister, Alexander, Elena, Mrs. Chen, even James, who'd driven across the city to help. "We ignore it," she said. "We continue living our lives. I keep working at the community center, taking photographs, being with Alex. They want a reaction, a scandal. We don't give them one." "That's brave," Dana said. "But the internet has a long memory. This could affect your career, your family's privacy." "My career was built on my talent, not my relationship," Emma interrupted. "And my family is tougher than you think." "Damn right we are," Maria said, high-fiving her sister. Alexander pulled Emma aside. "Are you sure about this? I can make it go away. I have resources." "I know you do," Emma said, touching his face. Gently. "But using them would just prove their point. That I need you to fight my battles." "I don't, Alex. I just need you to stand with me." "Always," he promised. The next few days were brutal. The video went viral, spawning countless reaction videos and think pieces about gold diggers and class warfare. Emma couldn't go anywhere without being recognized and confronted. Someone spray-painted "gold digger" on her parents' fence. The community center received threatening calls, but something unexpected happened too. The kids from the community center started a social media campaign. "Gau's the real Emma." They posted photos she'd taken of them, stories about how she'd encouraged them, videos of her teaching photography to anyone who wanted to learn, never charging a penny. The hashtag started trending. Local artists who'd known Emma for years began sharing their stories. The curator who'd rejected her that rainy night came forward, admitting he'd been wrong and showcasing her work on his gallery's Instagram. Mrs. Chen did a video interview about the young woman who'd always helped elderly customers with their groceries, who'd photographed her grandchildren's birthdays for free. Even more surprisingly, 3 of Alexander's ex-girlfriends, the waitress, the teacher, and a nurse Vivian hadn't mentioned, came forward with a joint statement. They revealed that Alexander had ended things with them respectfully when they'd realized they weren't compatible, and that he'd helped each of them achieve their dreams without asking for anything in return. The teacher had gotten funding for her inner-city literacy program. The waitress had received a business loan to open her own restaurant. The nurse had gotten a scholarship to become a doctor. "You never told me about them," Emma said to Alexander after reading the statement. "It wasn't relevant," he said, uncomfortable with the attention. "They were good people who deserved support. But you weren't in love with them." "No," he said, meeting her eyes. "I wasn't. There's only been you, Emma. From the moment you crashed into me, there's only been you." The tide of public opinion began to turn, but Richard Hartley wasn't finished. He launched an investigation into Cross Technologies, community center funding, claiming fiscal irresponsibility to shareholders. 3 board members called for an emergency meeting to discuss Alexander's leadership. The night before the board meeting, Emma found Alexander on the roof of his building, staring out at the city. "You could lose everything," she said, joining him at the railing. "No," he said, pulling her close. "If I have you, I have everything." "Alex, be serious." "I am being serious." He turned to face her. "I've been thinking about what really matters. The company was my safety net, my proof that I was worth something. But it's also been my prison. These past 2 months with you, I've been happier than I've been in years. If the board wants to oust me, let them. I'll start something new, something better, something ours." "Ours?" "Marry me," he said suddenly. Emma's heart stopped. "What?" Alexander dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. "I know it's too soon by conventional standards, I know. We're in the middle of a crisis. I know 100 reasons why I should wait. But I also know that you're my home, Emma. You're my family, my future, my everything. Marry me. Not to prove anything to anyone, not because of the scandal, but because I can't imagine a life without you." The ring was perfect. Not huge or ostentatious, but a vintage piece with a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. The blue stone, the exact shade of the dress she'd worn to the gala. "It was my foster mother's," Alexander said. "The only good one I had. She died when I was 15, but she left this for me. Said to give it to the woman who made me believe in family again." Emma was crying now, not caring that they were standing on a roof in Chicago with the wind whipping around them. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course, yes." Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, and for a moment, all their problems disappeared. There was just them and the city lights and the promise of forever. But morning came too soon, and with it, the board meeting. Emma insisted on going with him. "We're a team now," she said, flashing her ring. The boardroom was intimidating, all dark wood and serious faces. Richard Hartley sat at the far end, looking smugly confident. Several board members Emma recognized from the gala avoided her eyes. Alexander stood to address them, and Emma had never been prouder of anyone in her life. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "you're here to question my leadership, specifically regarding the community center initiative. Let me save you time. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it shows no traditional ROI. And yes, I plan to expand it to 10 more cities this year." Murmurs of shock rippled through the room. "Have you lost your mind?" one board member asked. "No, I've found it," Alexander replied. "This company was built on innovation, on taking risks, on seeing potential where others saw problems. Those kids in Pilsen, in Bronzeville, in Little Village, they're not charity cases. They're future innovators, entrepreneurs, artists. We're not losing money, we're investing in the next generation of genius. Pretty words, Hartley said. But shareholders care about profits, not feelings. Then let me put it in terms you'll understand, Alexander said. He clicked a remote and a presentation appeared on the screen. 3 of our community center kids have already developed apps that we're considering acquiring. 5 have created artistic works that are being featured in major galleries, bringing unprecedented positive PR to our brand. 20 have tested into advanced placement programs, with 10 already accepted to top universities. This is after 6 weeks. He clicked again. Moreover, our employee satisfaction is at an all-time high. Recruitment applications have increased by 300%. 3 major companies have approached us about partnering on similar initiatives. We're not just doing good, we're revolutionizing corporate responsibility. But the cost, another board member started, will be offset by the long-term benefits, Emma interrupted, standing up. Everyone turned to stare at her. I'm sorry, I know I'm not supposed to speak here, but you're all missing the point. Ms. Martinez, Hartley said coldly. This is a board meeting, not a photo shoot. You're right, it's not a photo shoot, Emma said, her voice steady. It's a moment of decision. You can choose to be the company that only cares about quarterly earnings, or you can be the company that changed the world. Every major innovation started with someone saying it was too expensive, too risky, too unconventional. She pulled out her tablet, showing her photographs from the community center. This is Jamal, age 12. He'd never touched a computer before our program. Last week he coded his first game, a learning app for kids with dyslexia like his little sister. This is Maria, age 67. She learned to video chat so she could see her grandchildren in Mexico. She's now teaching computer literacy to other seniors in her building. Emma looked directly at Hartley. You see waste. I see potential. Alexander sees the future. And if you can't see it too, then maybe you're the ones who don't belong here. The room was silent. Then, slowly, one board member began to clap, then another. Soon most of the room was applauding, except for Hartley and his 2 allies. I call for a vote, Alexander said. All in favor of continuing and expanding the community initiative? 8 hands raised. Against? 3 hands, including Hartley's. Motion carried, Alexander said. And Mr. Hartley, your resignation from this board would be appreciated. We're moving in a direction that clearly doesn't align with your values. Hartley stood, his face purple with rage. This isn't over, Cross. You think you've won? I'll destroy you both. You can try, Alexander said calmly. But you'll fail, because what Emma and I have, what we're building, it's bigger than your petty revenge. After Hartley stormed out, the remaining board members congratulated them both. Several mentioned they hadn't known about the engagement until they saw Emma's ring. We're getting married next month, Alexander announced, surprising Emma. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. You're all invited if you can promise to leave business at the door. As they left the building, Emma turned to him. Next month, unless you want to wait? Alexander looked uncertain. No, Emma said, pulling him down for a kiss. Next month is perfect, but I'm planning it. Your idea of small and mine are probably very different. They were married 5 weeks later at Mrs. Chen's cafe, with only 40 guests. Emma wore her mother's wedding dress, altered by Elena. Alexander cried when he saw her walking down the makeshift aisle between cafe tables. Carlos officiated. He'd gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. The community center kids served as an unofficial honor guard, holding up their tablets with coded light shows they'd programmed themselves. Elena was Alexander's best woman. Maria was Emma's maid of honor. Mrs. Chen made the cake, a simple but elegant creation that was far better than any 5-star pastry. Richard Hartley made one last attempt to ruin things, sending photographers to crash the wedding. But the community center kids formed a human barrier, and the photographers found themselves faced with 40 teenagers armed with smartphones, live streaming everything. You mess with them, you mess with all of us, Jamal said, the 12-year-old programmer standing tall. The photographers retreated, As Emma and Alexander had their first dance to a song played by her cousin's mariachi band, she whispered in his ear, "Thank you." "For what?" "For catching me when I fell." "Thank you for jumping," he replied. Vivian appeared one last time, a week after the wedding. Emma was alone at the community center when she walked in, looking less polished than usual. "Came to apologize," Vivian said without preamble. Emma nearly dropped her camera. "What?" "The video. The harassment. It went too far. I was angry, jealous, and I let my father convince me to do something unforgivable." Vivian sat down heavily in a plastic chair. "I've been in love with Alexander since we were in business. School together. Did you know we were in the same MBA program?" Emma shook her head. "He never noticed me then either." "Not really. I was just another rich kid playing at business. But he was different. Hungry, driven, brilliant. I thought if I could just make him see me." She trailed off. "But you can't make someone love you?" "No," Emma agreed quietly. "You can't. He looks at you the way I always wanted him to look, at me," Vivian continued. "Like you're his whole world. I hated you for it. But seeing that video, seeing how the internet attacked you, I realized I'd become someone I don't recognize, someone cruel. Why are you telling me this? Because I wanted you to know that I'm done. No more schemes, no more attacks. I'm actually leaving Chicago, taking a job in London, fresh start." Vivian stood to leave, then paused. "Take care of him. He acts tough, but he's more fragile than he seems." "I know," Emma said. "And Vivian, good luck in London. I mean that." Vivian gave her a sad smile and left. That evening, Emma told Alexander about the visit. "She's really leaving?" he asked, surprised. "Sometimes people need distance to become who they're meant to be," Emma said. They were quiet for a moment, standing in their new shared apartment. They'd decided to get a place that was theirs, not his or hers, but theirs. It was in Lincoln Park, close enough to the community center and his office, with a dark room for Emma and an office for Alexander. "No more drama?" Alexander asked hopefully. "Well, your sister is designing a clothing line inspired by our wedding. My mother is determined to teach you every Mexican recipe in existence. And we have a company to run and communities to transform," Emma said. "So probably lots of drama, just the good kind." Alexander laughed, pulling her close. "I love our life." "Even the chaos?" "Especially the chaos. It means we're living, really living, not just existing in our separate safe spaces." Emma thought about the woman she'd been just months ago, alone, struggling, afraid to trust. That woman would never have believed she'd be here, married to a man who loved her completely, surrounded by chosen family, doing work that mattered. "Hey," Alexander said, noticing her contemplative mood. "What are you thinking?" "Just that sometimes. The best things come from the most unexpected collisions." "Speaking of unexpected," Alexander said with a grin, "Elena called. She wants us to model for her new line. Something about authentic love being the best advertisement." Emma groaned. "Your sister is relentless. It's why we love her." "True," Emma admitted. "But I'm not walking any runways." "Deal. But you have, to help me convince the board to approve the next phase of expansion. 10 cities, remember?" 20, Emma corrected. "Dream bigger, Mr. Cross." 20 it is, Mrs. Cross." They sealed it with a kiss, and outside their window Chicago sparkled with possibility. Their story had begun with a collision in the rain, two lonely souls finding each other against all odds. Now, they were building something together. A life, a family, a legacy that went beyond money or status. The gossip sites had moved on to other scandals. Vivienne was gone. The community centers were thriving, and Emma and Alexander Cross were proof that sometimes love really could bridge any gap, overcome any obstacle, and create something beautiful from the most unlikely beginnings. But their biggest adventure was still to come. The unexpected gift 1 year later, Emma stood in the newly opened Los Angeles Community Center, watching Alexander teach a coding class to eager teenagers. His sleeves were rolled up, his hair slightly mussed, and he had that passionate gleam in his eyes that she'd fallen in love with. They'd successfully expanded to 20 cities, just as she'd challenged him to do, and each opening brought the same joy. "Mrs. Cross?" A young voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Jamal, now 13 and serving as a junior instructor, having flown in from Chicago for the opening. "The documentary crew wants to interview you." Emma sighed. 3 months ago, a prominent filmmaker had approached them about documenting the community center project. Alexander had been hesitant, worried about their privacy, but Emma had convinced him it could inspire other companies to follow suit. 5 minutes, she told Jamal, then felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. She gripped the doorframe, waiting for it to pass. "You okay?" Jamal asked, concerned. "Just tired," Emma said, though she'd been feeling off for weeks. "Too much traveling." The truth was, they'd been going nonstop since the wedding. 20 city launches in 12 months, plus maintaining the Chicago centers, board meetings, and Emma's growing photography career. She'd just been offered a show at the Museum of Contemporary Art. It was everything they'd dreamed of, but exhausting. "Emma." Elena rushed over, having noticed her moment of weakness. "You look pale." "I'm fine," Emma insisted, but Elena was already steering her to a quiet office. "When's the last time you ate?" Elena demanded. Emma tried to remember. "This morning. Maybe." "Maybe." Elena pulled out her phone. "That's it. I'm calling Alexander." "Don't you dare. He's teaching." "Then we're going to the hospital." "Elena, I'm just tired." "You've been just tired for weeks. You barely ate at Mom's birthday dinner. You turned green at the smell of coffee yesterday. And don't think I didn't notice you crying at that commercial about puppies." Emma froze. "That was just... Puppies are emotional." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Emma, when's the last time you had your period?" The question hit Emma like lightning. She pulled out her phone, checking her calendar, and felt the blood drain from her face. "Oh my God." "Yeah, that's what I thought," Elena said gently. "Come on, there's a pharmacy down the street." 2 hours later, Emma sat in the community center's bathroom staring at 3 positive pregnancy tests. Elena stood guard outside, having told everyone Emma had a migraine. "Well?" Elena called. Emma opened the door, wordlessly showing her the tests. Elena squealed, then immediately covered her mouth. Sorry, how are you feeling? Happy? Scared? Both?" "Both," Emma admitted. "We haven't even talked about kids. We've been so focused on the centers, on building the program. What if Alexander isn't ready? What if—" "Stop," Elena said firmly. "My brother has been doodling baby names in the margins of his meeting notes for months. He'll be over the moon." "He has?" "Emma, he looks at kids' furniture online when he thinks no one's watching. The man is baby crazy but didn't want to pressure you." Emma felt tears welling up. Again. The emotional roller coaster of the past few weeks suddenly made sense. "How do I tell him?" she asked. Elena grinned. "Leave that to me." That evening, the LA launch party was in full swing. Local celebrities, tech moguls, and community leaders mingled with the neighborhood families who would benefit from the center. Emma watched Alexander work the room, his natural introversion overcome by his passion for the project. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena's voice came over the sound system. "Before we continue the celebration, my brother has something he'd like to share." Alexander looked confused. "I do?" Elena handed him an envelope. "The results from Emma's latest project. She's been working on it for a few weeks now." Alexander opened the envelope, pulling out a photograph. Emma had taken it that afternoon. A close-up of the pregnancy tests arranged to spell out, "Hi, Dad." The room seemed to stop. Alexander stared at the photo, his face cycling through confusion, realization, and then pure, unbridled joy. "Emma?" he said, his voice cracking. "Really?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Really?" Alexander crossed the room in 3 strides, lifting her into his arms and spinning her around, both of them laughing and crying. The room erupted in applause and cheers. "We're having a baby," Alexander whispered against her ear. his voice full of wonder. "We're having a baby," Emma confirmed. Mrs. Chen, who'd flown in for the opening, was the first to reach them. "Finally, I've been waiting for this news. This child will be so loved." Emma's parents, also there for the launch, engulfed them both in hugs. Isabel was already planning the nursery, while Carlos tried to look stern but couldn't hide his grin. "You hurt my daughter or grandchild, and billionaire or not," he started. "Papa, stop," Emma laughed. "You've already given him this speech 3 times. "And I'll keep giving it," Carlos said, but he hugged Alexander. "Congratulations, mijo." The documentary crew, still filming, captured it all. Later, that moment would become one of the most watched clips when the film released, showing a billionaire CEO crying with joy over a pregnancy announcement, surrounded by a blended family of blood and choice. But not everyone was celebrating. 3 weeks later, back in Chicago, Emma was reviewing photos in her new studio space when James knocked on the door. "Mrs. Cross? There's something you need to see." He handed her a tablet showing a business news article. Cross Technologies stock plummets amid concerns over CEO's priorities. The article detailed how some investors were worried that Alexander's focus on the community centers and now a baby would distract from company growth. There were quotes from anonymous board members expressing concern about his leadership. "It's Hartley," James said. "He's been quietly buying shares through shell companies, building a coalition to challenge Mr. Cross's control." Emma felt her protective instincts flare. How much damage can he do? If he gets enough shareholders on his side, he could force a vote of no confidence. Mr. Cross would retain his shares, but he could be removed as CEO. "Over my dead body," Emma said, standing up too quickly and immediately regretting it as morning sickness hit. After the nausea passed, Emma called an emergency meeting of their inner circle. Elena, her parents, Mrs. Chen, and surprisingly, 3 of Alexander's former girlfriends who'd become unlikely allies and friends. "We need to remind people why Alexander's leadership matters," Emma said. "Not with PR spin, but with truth." "What did you have in mind?" asked Sarah, the former waitress who now ran a successful restaurant chain. Emma smiled. "A gathering. Not a gala or a corporate event. A celebration of what the centers have achieved. Let the kids tell their stories. Let the communities speak for themselves." They organized it in 2 weeks, calling it Voices of Tomorrow. It wasn't held in a fancy venue, but simultaneously across all 20 community centers, live-streamed and connected. Each center showcased their students' achievements, apps developed, art created, lives changed. But the most powerful moment came from Chicago. Jamal, the 13-year-old programmer, took the stage. "Mr. Hartley says Mr. Cross is distracted," Jamal said, his voice steadied despite his nerves. "He says focusing on us kids instead of stock prices is bad business. But you know what? Before Mr. Cross, I'd never even seen a computer up close. My mom works 3 jobs. We couldn't afford internet. Now I'm coding apps, teaching other kids, and MIT is already scouting me for their program." He looked directly at the camera. "Mr. Cross isn't distracted. He's focused on the right things. He's building tomorrow's innovators, artists, and leaders. And if you can't see the value in that, then maybe you're the one who doesn't belong in his company." The live stream went viral. Voices of Tomorrow trended globally. More importantly, major investors began calling Alexander, expressing support. Several tech giants announced similar community programs, citing Cross Technologies as inspiration. Hartley's coup attempt crumbled. He sold his shares at a loss and disappeared from the business world, his reputation destroyed by his own pettiness. That night, Emma found Alexander on the roof of their building, a habit he'd developed when he needed to think. "You saved me," he said as she joined him. "Again?" "We saved each other," Emma corrected, placing his hand on her growing bump. "That's what we do." The baby kicked for the first time, and Alexander's face lit up with wonder. "She's strong," he said. "She?" Emma raised an eyebrow. "You think it's a girl?" "I hope so," Alexander admitted. "A little girl with your courage and your heart." And your brain, Emma added. Your determination. Our stubbornness, they said in unison, then laughed. As her pregnancy progressed, Emma continued working, documenting the center's growth and her own journey. The photos from this period would later become her most celebrated collection, Life Creating Life, showing the parallel development of the community programs and her growing belly. Alexander became endearingly overprotective. He installed air purifiers in every room, researched every possible pregnancy complication, and once tried to bubble wrap the stairs. I'm pregnant, not made of glass, Emma reminded him after he'd tried to carry her up 3 flights. You're carrying our child, he said seriously. You're both precious beyond measure. Elena designed an entire maternity line inspired by Emma, donating the proceeds to support single mothers in the community programs. Maria started a blog about being an aunt-to-be that somehow gained 1 million followers. Isabel and Carlos moved temporarily to Chicago to be closer, and Carlos and Alexander bonded over building the perfect crib. Mrs. Chen knitted so many baby blankets they could have opened a store, but it was the kids from the centers who touched Emma most. They created a digital baby book, each contributing something: coded lullabies, digital art, video messages for the baby to watch when older. This kid is going to be so loved, Emma said, watching a video from a girl in the Miami Center demonstrating a robot she'd built that could rock a baby carriage. Just like their mother, Alexander said, kissing her temple. At 7 months pregnant, Emma faced a challenge she hadn't expected. Her estranged father, her biological father who'd left when she was 2, reached out. Carlos had raised her, loved her, been her real father in every way that mattered. But now this stranger wanted to meet his grandchild. Tell him no, Alexander said immediately when she showed him the letter. He doesn't deserve to know you or our child. But Emma was conflicted. What if our child asks about him someday? What if there's medical history we need? After much discussion, they agreed to meet him, in public with Alexander present. Roberto Vega was not what Emma expected. Instead of the monster she'd imagined, he was a tired-looking man with her eyes and a weight of regret on his shoulders. I don't expect forgiveness, he said immediately. I was young, stupid, and scared. I ran from the best thing in my life, your mother and you. So why now? Emma asked, her hand protectively over her belly. Because I've spent 25 years regretting it. Because I've followed your career, your art, your marriage, because I want to apologize before it's too late. Are you sick? Alexander asked bluntly. No, just old and aware that time is finite. Roberto pulled out a box. These are for you. Things I should have given you long ago. Inside were photos of his family, grandparents Emma had never known, medical records, and, surprisingly, a collection of newspaper clippings about her photography career. You've followed my work? Every show, every article. I even bought some pieces through galleries, anonymously. He smiled sadly. You have your grandmother's artistic eye. She was a painter in Mexico. Emma felt tears threatening. I didn't know that. There's a lot you don't know. A lot I should have told you. I'm not asking to be in your life, but if you ever have questions, if you ever want to know about that side of your heritage, I'm here. After he left, Emma cried in Alexander's arms for an hour. What do I do with this? She asked. Whatever feels right, Alexander said. There's no rule, book for complicated families. Eventually, Emma decided on limited contact, emails, medical information, maybe coffee once a year. Carlos remained her true father, but she could acknowledge Roberto's existence without betraying that bond. You're being very mature about this, Maria told her. I'm about to be a mother, Emma replied. I want our child to grow up knowing that families are complicated, that love isn't always perfect, but that choosing to show up is what matters. As her due date approached, Emma nested with a vengeance. She organized the nursery 3 times, took thousands of photos to document the journey, and drove Alexander crazy with her middle-of-the-night cravings for Mrs. Chen's dumplings. The community centers through her a massive virtual baby shower, with kids from all 20 locations participating. The gifts ranged from practical to hilarious: coding-themed onesies, a robot mobile, and approximately 300 handmade cards. But the best gift came from an unexpected source. Sarah, Alexander's ex-girlfriend turned friend, had coordinated with the other exes to create a fund for young mothers in the community programs, providing childcare so they could continue their education. "We wanted to honor what you and Alexander have," Sarah explained. "You showed us that love isn't about possession or status, it's about lifting each other up." Emma hugged her, this woman who could have been her rival but had become an ally. "Thank you." 2 weeks before her due date, Emma woke to find Alexander already awake, working on his laptop in bed. "What are you doing?" she asked sleepily. "Finishing something," he said mysteriously. She peered at the screen and gasped. He was coding an app, Our Story, an interactive timeline of their relationship, from collision to marriage to baby, filled with photos, videos, and messages. "It's for the baby," he explained. "So they always know how much they were wanted, how their parents found each other." "It's perfect," Emma said, then winced. "Oh." "Braxton Hicks?" Alexander asked, immediately concerned. "No," Emma said, feeling another contraction. "I think this is the real thing." Alexander went into full panic mode, grabbing the wrong hospital bag, trying to put Emma's shoes on the wrong feet and forgetting where he'd parked the car. "Alex," Emma said calmly between contractions, "breathe." "You're in labor? And you're telling me to breathe?" "Someone has to be calm, and it's clearly not going to be you." By the time they reached the hospital, half their extended family was already there or on the way. The waiting room looked like a community center reunion. 16 hours later, Sophia, Elena Cross entered the world screaming and perfect. She had Emma's dark hair and Alexander's blue eyes, and the moment Alexander held her, he sobbed. "She's so small," he whispered. "How is she so small and so perfect?" "She's ours," Emma said, exhausted but euphoric. "Our little miracle," Alexander agreed. When they introduced Sophia to the waiting room full of chosen family, Emma realized their daughter would never lack for love, guidance, or inspiration. She had grandparents, both biological and chosen, aunts, and uncles from all walks of life, and hundreds of kids in community centers across the country who already considered her their little sister. "She's going to change the world," Mrs. Chen declared, holding Sophia with practiced ease. "She already has," Alexander said, his arm around Emma. "She's changed ours." The documentary crew, who'd followed their journey for months, captured Sophia's first days. But the most powerful footage was Alexander in the NICU. Sophia had been slightly premature. Coding beside her incubator, creating educational apps for premature babies while refusing to leave her side. "You can go home and rest," Emma told him. On day 3. "Home is where you two are," he replied simply. When they finally brought Sophia home, they found their apartment transformed. The community center kids had worked with Elena to create a nursery mural telling their story in art. The rain, the collision, the community centers all leading to a small figure reaching toward the stars. "It's beautiful," Emma breathed. "Look closer," Elena said. Each star had a name, every child from the community centers, forming constellations of possibility around their daughter. That night, as Sophia slept between them, despite all the books, saying not to co-sleep, Emma and Alexander marveled at how far they'd come. 2 years ago, I was alone, struggling, convinced I'd never make it as an artist, Emma said. 2 years ago, I was successful but empty, building an empire but not a life, Alexander replied. And now? Now we have everything that matters. Each other, our family, meaningful work, and this little one who's going to grow up knowing she can be anything. Sophia made a small sound in her sleep, and both parents immediately checked on her. We're going to be those parents, aren't we? Emma laughed. The ones who panic over every sound? Absolutely, Alexander agreed. And I wouldn't have it any other way. 3 months later, at Sophia's first community center visit, a reporter asked Emma how she balanced motherhood, art, and being married to one of tech's most powerful men. Emma looked at Alexander teaching coding with Sophia strapped to his chest. In a carrier, watched her parents helping kids with homework, saw Elena designing with teenagers, observed Mrs. Chen serving her famous dumplings to hungry families. "I don't balance it," Emma said. "We build it together, all of us. That's what family does." The reporter seemed confused. "But how do you have it all?" Emma smiled, thinking of their unconventional, chaotic, beautiful life. "By redefining what all means. It's not about having everything society says you should want. It's about having everything that matters to you." As if on cue, Sophia began crying. Alexander tried to soothe her while still explaining variables to his students. Emma rushed over to help, and within moments, they were surrounded by their extended family, everyone offering assistance, advice, and love. It was messy and loud and nothing like the polished life Emma had once imagined for herself. It was so much better. That night, after Sophia was asleep and the centers were closed, Emma and Alexander stood on their balcony, looking out at the city where their story began. "Any regrets?" Alexander asked. "Only one," Emma said. He looked at her in alarm. "I wish we'd met sooner," she said. "Think of all the time we could have had." "But then we wouldn't have been ready," Alexander pointed out. "We both needed to become who we were meant to be before we could find each other." "When did you become so wise?" "When you crashed into my life and taught me what really matters." They kissed under the Chicago stars, Sophia's baby monitor crackling softly between them, the city humming with life below. Their story was far from over. There would be more challenges, more triumphs, more unexpected turns.